All right, looks like we're live. Talking physics, to myself essentially, but it'll have to do. All right, working and such. So preliminaries are completed and such. Oh, I forgot I always forget. Yeah, so many things to remember. Pop out chat crap. I have to move this down and I have to pop this open and pop out the chat. Slide that over here and blah blah blah. Ooh, you want to do that exactly. No permanent damage done. And there. Now it's close enough. All right. Might as well read a couple of the comments, not too useful, and then attempt to a couple of subjects, so nothing specific yet. We'll talk a little bit about lensing, but I don't think that's going to be the subject, but we'll see how it goes. Nice subjects to argue. Is there always a polarization in the surface molecules? Question mark. So yeah, I really don't know what he's saying there. Molecules are polarized electrically, different than photons polarization. But anyway, if not, can we do Argo spot test and use some kind of unpolarized surface molecule material where the electrons are orbiting in circles? Well, again, whether they're orbiting or not is a question under dispute. So we should not see the rings like the typical tests. So the rings, I guess he's talking about the double slit, or he's talking about the bars. So I don't know exactly which. Yeah, it's just too vague a question. But the Argo spot is an interesting thing because, their theory is this Huygens thing, that, millions of new waves are created and they all have the same wavelength. And so they constructively interfere to create this very, very, very faint spot inside of a shadow. And so I did think about that just because you brought it up. And it's a phenomenon, but I would argue that, it's worthy of explanation and explanation. And so in thinking about it, so the idea is that you shine light, you create a very small little 5 millimeter little thing, shine light, create a shadow, and at the precise distance, you'll be able to see this little spot dead in the center. And I would argue that that spot is just an extension of the pattern, the bar pattern, Newton's rings. And there's just a part where it gets so faint, so few photons, that you can't see it. It's not obvious. So that's an experiment I want to do. I want to see if I can detect the pattern on the periphery of the double slit experiment and see, or the single slit, and see if there is anything you can detect out there in terms of a pattern, using time-lapse photography and such. So I'll see if I can find some pattern out there. And so this little tiny faint spot is, again, it's very faint. And so I might speculate that at different focal lengths, that is, when you go to different focuses, foci, focus, whatever, that spot will become a ring, commensurate with the frequency of the light at certain distances. So if you adjust the distance just right, you would get to a point where there'd be a ring instead of a dot. But the problem is you're still stuck with very little light. And so when all the light's in one dot, you can barely see it. And if you spread that light over a whole ring, then you're not going to see it at all. So that might be a trick to how you have to do the experiment. Again, it might have to be done with time lapse and so you can gain more photons to see if that might be true. But anyway, that's just my speculation. That the spot is only visible because it is all the light is in one spot, and that's why it's visible. And if it was spread out over any kind of surface, you wouldn't see it. So you're only seeing it because all the light is hitting one spot, I think. Good. Whiskey and grape juice really isn't bad. Anyway, whiskey and anything probably isn't bad, actually. But anyway, moving on. So this comment was funny, so we'll play with this one for a while, because this was hilarious. Okay, retard. First, you may want to work on your presentation skills because you can't even coherently explain your ideas well. You can make that argument, but clearly some people have understood what I've said. And it is physics, by the way. But anyway, yeah, I don't think I failed in any respect in terms of even just explaining this whole dot thing. It's close enough. And I never had to use the word like hyperboloid or lack of inertia or counter space or what's the other one they use all the time? That silly electricity one. Dielectricity. I never had to employ any dielectricity. Fuck you. Anyway. Well, in a concise and meaningful way. Well, again, you can say that. I don't see where you've demonstrated any evidence of it. So I don't know what to say. I've done the best I can. If you're not pleased, I'm just so disappointed. Fuckhead. It may help to lay off the crack, Meg. Whatever that is. So it's just some accusation of, it's just this cliche accusation that you're a drug user. Would you have long hair? Is that it? I mean, what? What's your problem? Just saying. Well, I mean, yeah, isn't that what the world's full of? Is people who just profile other people and then discriminate against them. So this guy, well, yeah, let's go to his channel. We might as well have the fun now, just so you can. So in context, so he has 4 videos on his channel, only 4. And they're all this Bay Area flash mob, Castro, SF Pride Weekend HD. So anyway, it's gay pride stuff. And it doesn't look like he's ridiculing it. So this must be something that he thought was interesting and appreciated, these people. And but if I profiled them all as slackers and goofballs and that guy looks like he's wearing a platypus on his head. But yeah, so let's play some of it. But I mean, it's just so bizarre for somebody who may be sympathetic to people who are superficially profiled and dissed, based on the fact that they're different and treated poorly because of it, not because of their character, not being judged based on the content of their character, but being judged based on the strangeness of their fetishes, or the lack of normalcy. And here he is doing the same thing to other people. I mean, just these insane, duplicitous hypocrites. So the bizarre thing is that the main character, okay, in this little freak show, was wearing the white wig, long wig, and I mean, it could be a characterization of me almost, which is kind of funny, and yet, he's ridiculing that very thing. Would he tell this person to go get a haircut? Quit being a slacker? Yeah. That is funny. I laughed. And you know, if the aliens could watch this stuff, you know, it would just, I'd love to see their faces. Humans. Yeah. Anyway, yeah, it's very entertaining. Very, okay, fun, whatever, fine. I'm not a fun person really, so it's not, you know, my thing, but you know, it does have a certain something. So anyway, that's what's on his channel. That's what he's doing on the internet, and he's ridiculing me with bullshit like crack meg, whatever that is. You are trying to equate an idealized simple whiteboard analogy. Again, physics shouldn't be a simplified whiteboard analogy, whatever that is. You're describing the nature of reality. And, you know, it's perfectly fine to use comparisons to other things, but you have to take responsibility for the kind of the silliness of some of those comparisons. So, you know, like when Susskind uses water between two pieces of glass, you know, and has it drain out in the middle and pour in from the outside edge of the glass. And, you know, it has the constant pressure in between to, you know, argue about what gravity is. You got to take responsibility for that analogy. You know, clearly that's not what the reality is. So what's in between the glass? If it isn't water, what is it? Yeah, space. Yeah, nothing. Put nothing between two pieces of glass and see if it goes anywhere. Anyway, let's see. Intended for classroom use. Again, this is just all nonsense. Most of the clips I play are intended for college student use, with how the real practical experiment was done. So this is, again, ludicrous. So I'll just read this part because this guy obviously hasn't done any of the stuff he's suggesting I do. Please look up Thomas Young. No, why don't you do it? Why don't you actually look up and see if you can find the actual description of the experiment he did? Because guess what? There isn't one, asshole. Okay, some real physicists tried on the anniversary of Thomas Young experiment. They actually tried to duplicate his experiment, and doing all the research they could on the internet, they couldn't find a complete diagram of exactly how to build the Thomas Young experiment. So they had to sort of improvise. They used a cardboard box and they did some different things because they had to use sunlight. But they sort of had to make it up because it wasn't written down anywhere, asshole. Asshole. And read the original papers. Why? What's in them? Why don't you quote from the original papers if there's something brilliant in them? The original papers don't say anything. They don't demonstrate anything. This is a totally uninteresting phenomenon if you're aware of the fact that Newton already discovered it, if you even do any research at all. So again, what research have you done? Please show me the links to the great research you've done on Thomas Young's experiment. Prove that you're an expert. Prove that you've even looked at one document. Prove it, asshole. God, he's such a hypocrite, right? So he's a hypocrite about the whole gay thing, a hypocrite about this drug thing, a hypocrite about, you know, this crap about other people needing to do research that he hasn't done. He's the one with no knowledge on the subject. He's the ignorant asswipe. Just amazing. I mean, it really is amazing. All right, face it. Newton's approximations are dead. That's just an insanely silly argument. I mean, really, everything Newton did is perfectly fine. You can add to it, but you really can't subtract from it. It's sort of like Darwin, okay? Darwin's not dead because Gould figured out that, yeah, most of the evolution happens in small number of dissidents. You know, the dissidents go off on their own, and they do it a new way, and they evolve very quickly because they're very small numbers. So any mutations that happen in small groups, those mutations have a much better chance of surviving dilution. So yes, punctuated equilibrium, a bunch of small groups do all the real evolving, and then they become so much more functional than the old version that they overwhelm it through attrition. Yeah, that's not saying Darwin's wrong, idiot. That's just adding more detail, jackass. All your questions have been adequately explained. I mean, what a preposterous lie you will get blocked for. Just an insane lie. I mean, the comment section is empty. There are no answers to any of the questions. None. Just an insane lie. And gone over by subsequent other experiments. Like what? So more, you're just beating a dead horse. No, I'm beating a bunch of lying cunts like you. And I'm demonstrating how you have nothing. You have no argument. Your duplicity and your hypocrisy is obvious here. You're making statements you don't back up with a shred of evidence. You haven't. What's your adequate explanations for why photons in the photon experiment, the pattern doesn't look like the electron experiment? What's your explanation? Okay. Either have a theory that predicts other natural phenomenon better or go home. What exactly? It does predict it better. It predicts that you've been duped by silly exaggerations, by nonsensical comparisons. You see a pattern and you compare it to water, and then you say, oh, it's the same as water. And it's just as bad as these assholes with the spinning crap saying, oh, because spinning objects move towards each other, that's how magnetism works. It's just as stupid as that. All right, and this stupid lensing crap is just so glaringly, preposterously silly. The math can't possibly make any sense. Without dark matter, you're totally dead on the math. It's obvious bullshit. You're the one sitting there dead. Either have a okay, yes. So I've already done all that. P.S. Get a haircut, you slacker. So is that what I should say to all these assholes you have prancing around here? They all look like a bunch of slackers that need haircuts. So get haircuts and quit goofing off, slackers. I mean, you're just justifying it, you jackass. You stupid cunt. God, what a dumbass. So, fuck you. Jesus. Get what you deserve. Which is, beaten to death and left on the side of the road somewhere. Yeah. Oh, they moved it up. Hide this comment seems higher now. Yeah, cool. Good idea. All right. So don't worry. I was where you are now. I love when people say that, especially the religious kooks always say, I was a sinner like you, and then I found Jesus. Fuck you. You haven't achieved the fungus under my big toe. You're no part of me, asshole. It took me a while to get my head around. There's nothing to get your head around. Ken Wheeler is full of fucking shit. Jargon word, jargon word, jargon word. He has no theory at all. Counter space and dielectricity. What are those things, retard? We'll get around it, but I actually think he is right on many levels. What level is that? The level where he says love and magnetism are the same, love, hate, and magnetism are the same thing. That makes sense to you, you fucking retard? You're profoundly retarded. You're not just a retard, you're profoundly retarded. I don't expect you to agree with me. Yeah, well, that's what they all say. But yeah, there's not a chance in this, in the multiverse. Not even in the multiverses, there's no chance. asshole. That's the best part of being human. Oh, is it? Is that what you think the best part of being human is, that you're surrounded with assholes who can't add 2 + 2 and come up with 4? That's the fun part. Living with a bunch of assholes doing everything backwards. Oh yeah, that's swell. I love living in a world where people can't figure out how to wash their hands after coming out of a bathroom. Oh, yeah, it's just great. Fuck you. We don't have to agree. Well, yeah, we obviously don't. If we all took the same step in the sand, it would be a very boring world. Oh, isn't that so? More footsteps makes it more exciting. No, I don't think so. Footsteps are boring by nature. It's just the nature of a footstep. It's boring. It just is. God, you're such a dumb cunt. Ugh. Quest for knowledge, calls himself. Oh, but these wheelerites are just so fucking stupid. His last video, it's just this is it here, right? No, this is a different one. It's trying to pretend that that Newton's first law has an error in it. The law where things stay where they are until something acts on it to make it move. It doesn't just move on its, it doesn't say, I'm going to move. Yeah. Oh, what an asshole. But people eat this shit up. I mean, his newest video is the silliest. Metaphysics is the same as physics. As if there was something called metaphysics. There's religion and then there's science. So you can do science or you can do religion. There's no such thing as metaphysics. I mean, it's a silly word. Nonsensical rubbish, just like their dielectricity. Oh yeah, I'll design a circuit board with dielectricity in it. Why don't they make dielectric CPUs if dielectricity is such cool stuff? Why doesn't anybody use it anywhere? Oh, that's right, because it doesn't fucking exist. Shit. What fucking imbeciles. Oh, all right, so where to go now? Oh, I'm just off on the whole thing now. I'm sitting there burning myself out just thinking about these assholes. It's hot as hell in here, And the fan makes too much noise, so I turned it off. But really, it's tough in here without it. All right, so what was my agenda? Oh yeah, well, I want to talk a little bit about the lensing thing. And I think these are good enough tools for the explanation. Yeah, it's really satisfactory. So the interesting thing is, so if you just think of this as a lens, and this is just an object, and as I sort of pointed out, when they're separated by distance, they really don't change size. So even if this is 10 billion light years away, it's really the same size. It hasn't changed size at all. Same size relative to this. And the thing that really changes as you move things apart is that each little atom on this surface is producing light like this, in the whole 180-degree spectrum. So light is reflecting off of this object on each little atom. Some of the light reflects down, some it reflects up, some every single direction. And as you move the two things apart, what you're doing is you're not able to see any of the light coming off at angles anymore, right? That's missing the lens. So that's really the only thing that changes as you move them apart with distance. The only thing that changes is all the light that was going like this angle here. See, when it's going this angle, when they were close, that angle still hit this pen, still hit the lens. But as you move it a little further apart, that angle misses the lens now, goes over the lens. So as you move them really far apart, you can sort of understand that the only light that gets to this lens are all the little parallel beams from each atom, just the dead parallel ones. So the further away you go, the more parallel all the little light beams are. So they're all hitting the lens at exactly the same angle. And so for us to get it in our little lens, our little eyeball that's on the other side of this lens, the gravitational lens, it has to bend them all down at a specific angle, specific, precise angle. More bending out here, less bending here. But it has to be, precise angles for us to get an image of this. And so that's, and so this is just sort of interesting as a photography thing too. Just recognizing that that's what's really happening with distance. You're seeing less photons because all the ones that are coming off at an angle, you're not seeing anymore. They're all out of the picture. They can't get to the focus, except the ones that are subtly bent at these little tiny angles towards the center. So they're still able to get there, the little tiny angles. But obviously, even those angles, right, like this lower angle going up, well, yeah, you can hit it when you're close, but when you're far away, even that one misses. So even up from the bottom, it misses. So you can sort of see it's just less and less. And so it's getting more and more parallel. Now, there's still a little tiny hope of a little bend, right? But over a distance of, say, 5 billion light years, you can't have much of a deflection angle or it's going to miss this little lens. And it's certainly our eyeball it would miss. You can see this tiny, tiny, tiny little thing. So, yeah, I thought that was very interesting. So this is a reason why you can't do some experiment where you take a flash card with images on it and put it in front of a lens and say, look, I'm doing gravitational lensing. Because obviously you have all these angles, you're still shooting the light at all these weird angles, and they're still going into the lens. So you're not getting just the parallel light. And so you can get weird angles that bend that actually create an image that you wouldn't have if you had the real distance. Because at the real distance, you wouldn't be getting all those weird angled photons. So that's where it's relevant to the other asshole who posted a link to the other garbage website. But I just thought it was an interesting fact, and so I thought I'd re-emphasize it. It's something I hadn't really realized. I mean, I think I had heard people say things like, well, the light's parallel from 5 billion light years away. But I think they were arguing that it's parallel because they were making assumptions about the fact that it's traveling such a long distance and not so much about the fact that the object is actually still the same size. Okay, it's still the same size. So even though it looks smaller when we look at it this way, it looks like it got tiny. It's actually exactly the same size. The size doesn't change. The relative size of the lens and the object doesn't change with distance. And that's important to recognize, I think. All right, enough of that. Oh, I have this image problem still. I gotta remember. I gotta find some other solution, I guess, than to move my image off. I have to think of something else. Some other plan. Yes, Lady Gaga. Yeah, it's a whole bunch of Lady Gaga songs, and it's very nice precision dancing thing, But whatever. It's never was my thing. I just thought it was funny that somebody who was in some way appreciates the freaks of the world will profile them and mock them, when it's to his convenience. I mean, just such a hypocrite. Anyway, so I don't know if I want to play Ken Wheeler stuff, but maybe I could. Since I got it here, there was some other thing I wanted to do. I really wanted to emphasize just going over some of this basic stuff. So I'll do some of the basic stuff. Just re-emphasize this whole speed of force thing. The idea that there's two things in the universe. That does relates to this Ken Wheeler video. Two things in the world, right? There's force, the stuff moving the speed of light, and there's matter, the stuff not moving by itself, the speed of light. And that every piece of matter that is moving because force went into it. And it really did go into it, like the space shuttle. You can see the force kind of going into it. You see the big giant this going out the end, and there's this equal and opposite thing. And so there's another flame essentially going in the shuttle. The way the energy is being made is by expanding the atoms. And that what that means is there's stuff coming off in all directions. And so when you see the big flame coming out one end, you kind of know that they must be focusing the other reaction. Everything else on the other side, everything that was going the other way, is going into the shuttle. And it's just not going into it in the form of a flame, but the energy is going in. The force is going in. And everything that's moving, somewhere in its history, it had to be shuttled. It had to be launched. It had to have atoms expand and create some kind of explosion or some kind of change from high pressure to low pressure for it to have velocity. That's the way material objects gain velocity, because it's really the only way to produce enough force to give matter enough velocity for them to move, is you have to sort of create little explosions of some kind, little expansions. You have to inject them with force. So force, if you thought of it like a moving fluid, like an ether, it doesn't really matter what you think of it as, but that's the moving stuff. And the moving stuff is going into the matter thing, and it's staying in there. And that's why the thing's moving, is because the force is in there. And the only way it's going to stop moving is because somehow you have to counter this force, essentially ejecting it. I don't know how people can't get that. So anyway, then you can just do the simpler version of that, which is this push-pull argument. And it just seems kind of obvious that when you're starting your physics, that this is the main thing. Is how do you convey force? Do you convey it by pulling stuff, or do you convey it by hitting stuff, pushing stuff? And clearly, the push is so obviously the more fundamental mechanism, the more elemental, and that all pulls, I have to make some kind of thing that pushes from the other side. There is no pull. And I should be aware of that pull is complicated. And so every time I see something moving towards something else, I should recognize that, or I should be looking for the fingers. There's fingers reaching around, pushing it. There isn't anything pulling. There has to be fingers grabbing and pushing. And I should be looking for that external thing, the pusher, because there isn't any sensible way you can make this pull thing. There just isn't. It doesn't make any sense. And Einstein's mechanism doesn't make any sense. The pull thing is a vacuum cleaner in the center of the material objects that just pulls the space out, sucks all the, vacuums the space out, vacuums the ether, vacuums the fluid, vacuums whatever it is. But it's a vacuum cleaner. And that's how they illustrate it. And that's how they analogize it. The bent fabric thing, they don't do that. The serious physicists know that's two-dimensional and bullshit. They know in 3 dimensions, it's a convergence. Things move into the center from 3 sides. It's not a fabric. And why do they do that? And they say it's because there's some sort of pull mechanism. When the obvious answer is, no, there's a push mechanism. And so the obvious answer to where does that come from, would be that we already know the cosmic background radiation exists. We know that there's all this radiation coming from every single place in space, heading right for us, so to speak, a pressure. Now, it's not enough pressure to do much. But if we imagine for a moment that, and we recognize that Well, what is the nature of that radiation? Well, it's at a frequency. So a lot of it's in the microwave range, but there's radio wave range. There's, light ranges. There are all kinds of ranges that it comes in, that background noise. And if we just imagine for a minute that the force that is those radiations, the only way we detect them is because they have a frequency. So what if they didn't have a frequency? How would we know they were there, or they weren't there? We wouldn't have any way to detect them except to do something like this. So all the gravity is kind of obvious, can just be explained as that radiation, not at a frequency, and it's doing the obvious thing, which is hitting stuff, pushing it towards the center of the Earth. Exactly what the cosmic background radiation is doing. So if the cosmic background radiation was stronger, or let's say it was gravity, right? You'd understand it, and not gravity. Let's say it was a little asteroids. You'd get the idea that it would be pushing you towards the center of whatever you were standing on or whatever you were next to. That's the nature of it. So if I turned it into asteroids and you were the moon and you were next to the Earth, you could sort of understand that the asteroids would be hitting you from this direction, but you wouldn't be hit by any from this direction because the Earth was blocking those, and that both of you would end up pushed together by those little asteroids. It's just such a clean answer. I just don't know how there can be this much resistance to it. It's such a better starting point. Makes so much frickin' sense. All the motion matter has is merely because it's taking stuff moving the speed of light and trapping it. That's it. It's just trapping its momentum. It grabbed this part, and now it's neutralized the rest. But it did grab this part, and it's holding this part. All right, so we'll play some of this. So he's saying Newton was absurd, and his first point is because let me think. Because gravity is not a force. So let's understand it. Yes, Newton knew there was magnetism, and he knew there was gravity, and so he knew there were these certain things that he called forces. And Ken Wheeler was basically saying Newton didn't have a right to call them forces. He didn't have a right to say they qualify as something that affects things. So when Newton says this motion won't change, clearly he was saying it will change if you put it in force, though. So if you put it in proximity to a planet, it will move. It will be accelerated. That's change. That's an effect. So forces affect things. And he's just like pretending that somehow Newton wasn't supposed to account for real things that do exist and to label them with a word, just call it force. What's wrong with calling it the force of gravity? Well, there's nothing wrong with doing that. It's perfectly rational. He's not saying it was ether. He's not saying it was particles. He's not saying what the force is made out of. He's just saying, let's define it. It's a force. It exists. And here's the rules under which it exists, and it counts as something that affects a moving object. And he's, backseat driving fucking Isaac Newton. The guy's such a cunt.
Force? Why does motion or change of motion have anything to do with force?
So again, it's entirely how Newton used the word. So it's clearly rational vocabulary. The word force was invented essentially to describe exactly this idea of something that affects an object and makes it move. That's exactly what the word force was invented by definition to mean. And this asshole is saying, no, I'm going to now change the definition to force isn't a word. It doesn't mean anything. When clearly it did mean something. It meant the category of effects that we have documented, like magnetism and gravity. They're documented, they're well defined, and the rules of them, and it's a perfectly rational word to use.
Something falls, let's say a rock on the edge of a cliff, falls. There's no force involved.
It's just an amazing statement. The word force was exactly, the word force didn't exist in any other context. So this is supposed to be an asshole who's an expert on words. Well, I bet you won't find any use of the word force until the discovery of the force of gravity. I bet you that's when the word was invented, essentially, was to describe this very effect.
That's acceleration. Force and
Oh, yeah, well, I'm sure Newton knew that, and I'm sure he called it that, and it's exactly what he wrote about. So again, just more fucking bullshit. I mean, how, lying about dead people is just disgusting. Okay, and to say it's just acceleration is idiotic. A physicist wants to know why it accelerates. And Newton explained, well, it accelerates because it's being impacted by a force that has a strength that's proportional to the distance from the center of the object. And so it gave you a nice formula that explains to you exactly how much of this acceleration you can expect at any location. And this asshole saying there's something wrong with that? No, there's nothing wrong with that, asshole. You fucking piece of shit.
motion is the complete opposite of inertia and acceleration.
Okay, I mean, inertia and acceleration. So I just throw in the word inertia in here as if he's using it in the common sense of the word, which is motion. But he says inertia doesn't mean that. So in another video, he'll say inertia means counter space, whatever the fuck that is.
Inertia and acceleration are potential.
No, they're not. They're kinetic events. So again, more nonsense. Acceleration has nothing to do with potential. It's idiotic to say that. Acceleration is the rate at which you're changing. It's not. It's obviously it's a kinetic event. It's not a potential event. It's a kinetic event. So just more horse shit. I mean, why do people let him get away with this shit?
Force and motion are the release of some or all of that potential.
So more crap. Like the object moves because of some potential in it. Well, we know that's not how gravity works. So I mean, that's just fucking horse shit. Okay, because we know the potential changes completely dependent on location, not substance. The substance is irrelevant. A feather or a hammer falls exactly at the same rate as it's being affected by the force exactly proportional to its mass. Oh, fuck. It doesn't need to do a damn thing.
That is the expression of the loss of inertia or...
All right. So, and again, we know that gravity doesn't use up any of our energy. So we could fall in gravity for a bazillion years, right? And that's what the Earth is doing in its orbit. It's falling for a very long time. And it doesn't run out of gas. It doesn't run out of fuel. It's not using up any of its potential. It's not using any stored anything. It's just such horse shit.
Potential is force and motion.
Force and motion. I mean, just gibberish words, baby talk. Force and motion, movie, woovie. Go-gi, go, go, go. Blah, 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 blah. It's fucking baby talk, force and motion. What does that mean, you fucking lunatic? You just said force isn't a thing. Why are you even using the word force, you fucking kook?
People say Newton wasn't hit on the head by a falling apple, by the way. Newton was occasioned, as the story goes, by a falling apple. Now, if Newton had actually waited, a couple weeks, he would have noticed that after the apple had fallen, it would have re-arisen. What the hell?
Would have re-arisen. Re-arisen. So it's the re-erection. the re-resurrection. Re-arisen. But anyway, just, I don't even know how he's going to make any sense. Again, who cares whether the apple actually fell on his head thing or not? But I mean, you're not going to be able to prove that one way or another. But it's just kind of stinky to be sitting there playing a game like, let's rip the dead people a new asshole. You're just such a fucking coward. This picking on dead people is so fucking gross.
Has the apple actually deteriorated in its gaseous constituent?
In 2 weeks? You don't know much about apples, but it takes a little longer than that. I mean, even if a swarm of yellow jackets gets into them, and it's still going to take more than 2 weeks, asswipe.
Once off-gassed, Newton would have noticed, if he sat there long enough, he would have noticed that after the apple fell, it would have, part of it, of course, would have gone to the dirt.
Oh, there, you're going to concede the point. Yeah, the part of it, like 98% of it. Yeah, like something like that. I mean, considering that it's probably mostly water, and eventually you'll evaporate all the water out, and that will end up in a, who knows whether it'll ever go up to a cloud and become a raindrop. It might just stay humidity in the lower parts, and it might end up being dew on a leaf. But fuck you, it's not going to re-arising.
Worms, but let's just ignore the worms. So then we return to the earth, like the seeds and whatnot. But much of the apple, as far as its liquid components and its gaseous molecular off-gassing.
So more horseshit, right? Just more. I'm just going to talk gibberish. That's a tiny, tiny percentage of the apple, actually. The liquid isn't, but whatever these gases are that you're saying are trapped in the apple, they're not going to be released until the heavy elements are remetabolized inside of a new plant.
Would have floated back up into the air. Do you know why? Because everything in the universe is PM, pressure mediation.
Okay, now I'd say that's fine. Okay, but again, his idea of pressure is apparently he thinks things are attracting, and that's the pressure somehow. Somehow there's this vacuum sucking thing that happens, and things are moving into each other or something. And I don't know how you, when you see the trick is how do you create repulsion with that vacuum mechanism? It doesn't really work. Where with a pressure mechanism, you can do both, in the sense that you can create attraction here with extra pressure, and then you can have once you've compressed something, you can let it expand. So with an external pressure, you compress it, and then it can expand. So you can get both motions. But with the vacuum mechanism, right, you pull it in, but why would it want to jump out? Once you turn the vacuum cleaner off, why wouldn't everything just stay where it is? You know what I mean? It's fundamentally not as functional as the external pressure is. So the external pressure creates high pressure, and then that can push back out. But a vacuum mechanism, as soon as you turn the vacuum off, it has to bounce back. Unless you tie rubber bands to everything, it doesn't bounce back.
So he talks about action. Continue in a straight line until acted upon by an outside force. Well, acceleration is not a force.
Okay, so again, where did he say that? So again, he's saying gravity's the force and it causes acceleration. So again, he's straw manning a fucking dead man. This fucking cunt, this fucking coward who will not interact with any of his critics. Okay, this fucking coward is sitting there, picking apart and quote mining dead people. And putting words in their mouth they never said. Hey, what a fucking weasel.
Outside? Nothing is ever outside a field. Everything is always in some field, whether it's weak or strong. So
whatever that even means. How do you know that? How do you know where fields begin or end? Clearly gravity, as we know, gets incredibly weak as you get any kind of distance. If I put a magnet in California and I have a magnet in New York City, you're pretty certain that because of the inverse square law, that the effect those two magnets are having on each other is quite minuscule. And that you might even appreciate that for maybe I could have the one magnet sit here for 10 hours. In that 10-hour period, not a single effect from the other magnet will hit this one. Not a single one. Nothing. No, nothing. Nothing. No asteroid. No nothing. Nothing comes from it to indicate its existence reaches this other one. Maybe for 2 days. Who knows how long it would be? Because it's a tiny, tiny, tiny amount of force. It's like putting it's like putting a light bulb in California and then you sitting in New York City and counting the photons that hit you. All right, you're gonna be waiting a while between the counts. Trust me, you're gonna be waiting a while.
Nothing is ever outside. Let's talk about a straight line.
So whatever that is, nothing's ever outside. Like we don't even know what shape the universe is or what it's doing. We don't know what's outside. What we clearly know is everything has ranges of effect, and that there's a certain point you get to where the effect is so minuscule that you can't even measure it.
Line here in a second. All motion is curvilinear.
All right, so that's the one where he's saying this clearly Newton was saying this stuff moves at a particular vector. So if I throw this bottle into space, when I let go of it, it's done changing. All right, it's done accelerating, and whatever motion, whatever direction it's moving, it's going to move in a straight line in that direction. And that's what Newton was saying, that once you've stopped accelerating something, it's got a vector, and that's it. It's moving in that direction. So it's like two guys playing catch in space, orbiting the Earth. The baseball they'll throw and catch with, every time they release it, it'll actually be moving in the direction of their orbit. So it'll move back and forth between them and also in that direction. And it's going to do it as a direction, as a straight line. It's not going to move curvilinear. It's not going to do any of that crap. It's going to have a new vector, and it's going to be in the direction of where the guy will be. Because they both, the baseball, the two guys, all have one velocity in common. And in the throwing process, when the new acceleration happens, the new velocity, the new direction of the velocity is created, just like the Earth when it's bent. So as the gravity accelerates the Earth, it converts its pointing vector, its velocity in one straight line into a bent line. But there's no curvilinear. How does he get away with this rubbish? Isn't that more baby talk? Curved linear? What is that crap? Everything's curved linear when we know it's not. I can draw a straight line on a piece of paper. He's saying the edge of this paper is curved linear. It's not curved linear. It's a straight fucking line. Well, almost straight. It is humid. So yeah, the lines aren't as straight when it's humid.
A dog that's on a leash that's staked to the ground. I mean, it can only go around like this. And actually, as the dog winds its way around with the leash and the stake, it'll eventually wind its way like a vortex right back to the center again. Have you ever seen that happen before?
Yeah, I mean, modern technology sort of taking care of that, but whatever. What does that have to do with curved linear? What does that have to do with Newton saying, if I throw this bottle, it's in space, it's going to move in a straight line. And the only reason why it moves in a curved path when I throw it here on the surface of the Earth is because gravity's pushing it down. And that's it. It's getting affected by a force. Exactly what Newton said. It's being accelerated by a force.
There's no such thing as a straight line. There's not a single straight line.
Oh, just amazing. Why? How can he get away with saying things that are just so insanely stupid and just breaking language all over the place? There's no such thing as a straight line. It's just a silly thing to say. Insanely silly thing to say.
Line in the entire universe. No straight.
I mean, He said it 4 times now. And these people say there's a rational reason for him to say that. There's some rational reason to dispute the fact that we know there are straight lines. We know it.
Straight line exists. So Newton's notion of a straight line is the biggest absurdity of Mother Nature that's even possibly.
So it's an absurdity of Mother Nature and blah, blah, blah. So he's perverted nature by saying there are straight lines. So I just don't even know how people can. How does anybody make any sense out of this guy? How is that sensible to say? I mean, there's so many ways to prove the straightness of lines just by pointing out the distance between 2 points. And there's a straight line that's the shortest distance between 2 points. And it's a straight line. It's not some other kind of line. It can't be any other kind of line because then it wouldn't be the shortest distance. I mean, how do you people, I just don't get it.
Imaginable. All motion has its null point in inertia, which is the.
All motion has its null point in inertia. Now that means something, right? All motion has its null point. What's this null point crap? So something's moving and it has a null point. I throw this bottle into space and it's null pointing. No, it's not null pointing. It's no null point. Fucking insane.
Source of all force and motion anyway. There are no straight lines in the universe.
So he said it a 7th time. So I'm just saying, just for saying that 7 times, how, and again, just being fair copish, just being reasonable and saying, okay, maybe there's some way he's speaking some sort of Japanese or something. We're not quite getting what he's saying because we're missing a few words. How can that possibly be a reasonable premise? We know what straight is and we know what line is. I just don't know. I mean, we know the whole argument about the 2 points and the fact that there's a shortest distance, and the shortest distance isn't a curved line. I mean, I just don't get how people say that. Oh, yeah, that's rational. That's reasonable gibberish.
Even a pencil, let's just say this is a pencil, laying on a table is not at rest in many different modalities.
That wasn't Newton's point. He wasn't talking about things being at rest. He didn't care whether they're at rest or not at rest. The point is if whatever they're doing, they're going to continue to do it until a force acts on them. That's all he was saying. That whatever something's doing, it's going to keep doing it. Something, the only way they can change is some force has to act on it, because only forces can give this thing acceleration. And acceleration is the only way you slow it down, by decelerating, which is, accelerating the opposite direction, or combining 2 new speeds. So you're going to accelerate it. It's going this way, and you're going to accelerate this way. So now it's going to go this way. That's all. So again, he's just straw manning a dead man. I mean, it's molesting dead people, this fucking creep.
If it were not from the atomic homeostasis.
Okay, if it wasn't for the atomic homeostasis, another just bizarre statement, whatever that means, right? We already know that Brownian motion, we know there's no homeostasis in any reasonable sense, that every atom is doing a jiggle dance that could have 1 billion steps to it. That is, the patterns could have billion-year cycles to them in terms of where they end up creating the same pattern as they did 1 billion years ago, in the sense that the last 10 moves were the same as they were 1 billion years ago. And that won't happen again for another 1 billion years. Just like certain perfect eclipses over certain parts of the Earth only happen once in 1,000 years.
The molecules and atoms holding its mass together if the pure potential.
So again, the atoms and all that shit are holding the mass together. And my simple argument to you is that's more push crap. That's more pull crap. What's holding it together is the radiation from the outside. the force, the real thing, gravity, which is like the cosmic background radiation. So in a sense, maybe I'll call gravity radiation or something, because that's what it really is. It's an external pressure, and everything's being pushed together, not being pulled together.
Of this pencil, which is sitting here, well, it's just sitting there. No, it's not. Everything is in perpetual motion. All phenomena is a denotation of force and motion, even if it's in temporary homeostasis. If you're able to release the total, complete...
Didn't work again. Homeostasis again, but same old bullshit words. So what does the fact that it's in motion have to do with there's no straight lines? And again, what does it have to do with Newton? Newton never talked about items at anything called a real rest. He wasn't an idiot. It wasn't his point that things are at rest. They're at rest relative to us, in the sense they have the same condition that we're in. And he was perfectly aware of that. So let's not pretend he didn't know that.
Potential of the molecules and atoms in a pencil, you'd end up with something bigger than a fucking thermonuclear bomb. The pencil would wipe your shit right off the face of the earth.
Yeah, we all know that too, Ken. Everybody kind of knows that there's a whole, an apple is to the earth what an atom is to an apple. Lots of apples inside the earth. If you had to build the earth out of apples, a lot of atoms. And each one of them has a bunch of compressed little bits in it. And if those little bits are caused to be free, yes, lots of energy.
And your house, and probably half of your city, if all the absolute potential in the molecules and atoms of that pencil were to release.
It'd be more than just your city. A whole pencil could, if you got every single bit of the energy out of it, it would fracture the planet.
Okay, that's undeniable, right? Yeah, it sure is.
Yeah, who's denying it? Where did Newton deny it? Where did Newton say anything about fucking nuclear bombs, you idiot? He didn't know about atoms back then. You want to cut him a little bit of a break? A hell of a lot less information than you. And again, you're just this despicable coward picking on dead people.
All bodies are perpetually being acted upon by external acceleration. No body ever moved.
Exactly his point. And his point is that when you're outside of that acceleration, then you're not going to be affected by it, and then you'll just keep traveling in the direction you're going. And if there's no force acting on you, you will just keep going wherever, like a little photon traveling through space. That's exactly his point, shit for brain.
Moves in a straight line. There are no straight lines in the universe.
So again, he said it again. So I just don't know, how does any rational person make any sense out of that nonsense? No straight lines, no shortest distance between 2 points. There's no such thing as the shortest distance, or somehow the shortest distance is a crooked line. Even if you're not in gravity, you're in nothing's gravity, and yet somehow the shortest distance between 2 points is a crooked line. No, it isn't, Ken. You're an idiot. You made that up, and it's nonsense, and people are falling for it, which, it's disgusting. It's just, this is just such a, you're saying, okay, a religion, nobody could make up a new religion now. Who the hell could fall for that crap? But you're watching people right in front of your eyes doing it. This isn't any better than, he's not asking for anything from people, so they don't have to invest in his silly religion. So I guess that's the bottom line. If he was saying there's spaceships from the aliens are coming and they're going to take us to the better world, I guess most of these people would say, oh, well, maybe Ken doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about. But that's all this is. So all this really has is they're at no jeopardy to say, oh, great job, Ken. Just keep the babble up, baby. It's beautiful. Oh, yeah, it's beautiful. Because, they don't have any skin in this lie, in this fucking rubbish. It's a meaningless religion, so it's free to join, and you don't have to pay any dues, and so they go ahead and do it. But it's just fucking blubbery babble. I'm trying to think of a combination of blubber and babble because, yes, it kind of goes together with him.
Everything in the universe is curvilinear.
Yeah, you can keep saying it, but you're not going to prove it. And you're not going to demonstrate it. You're not going to in some way logically explain to me how the pencil isn't straight, that the lines aren't parallel, and that the distance between the point and the tail, this is a very shortest distance between the points, and it's not in any way have anything that we could call a curve in it. It's perfectly linear. No curve linear. It's linearly linear.
It's curvilinear because all force and motion is tied to, just like the dog to that leash, which is staked to the center of the ground. All force and motion is staked to inertial. This is why
all it's staked to inertial. So where's this inertial? Where is the inertial here on the desk? Is the inertial here in space? Where's this inertial that I'm tied to that's crookeding my lines? It's just rubbish. Fucking goo-goo. Just go goo-goo, gaga, goo-goo, gaga. It's just fucking baby talk.
all seashells are a vortex or spiral. This is why vortexes and spirals exist at every level of the universe.
I mean, none of this is true. Also, if there many of them are radial, they're not spiral. You know, it's just again just more false facts spoken by Ken. Ken says so. No, it's not the truth.
From macro to micro and vice versa. There are no fucking straight lines. Mother Nature doesn't. Oh, this is a straight line, right?
Okay, he said it again. I just don't get it. I just don't get how people can think that's a reasonable premise to defend. I don't know. How is it reasonable?
Right here, look at this crap, you know? No, that's not what I'm talking about.
Oh, yeah, it's not what I'm talking about. Oh, there's no straight lines, but I'm not talking about straight lines. I'm talking about something completely different. So don't be confused. When I say there's no straight lines, I'm not talking about straight lines. I'm talking about something completely different. Fuck. I mean, fuck. What horse shit. I can't. Unacceptable. Just unacceptable.
There are no straight lines in the universe. Nothing continues. So Newton says everybody continues in a state of rest or motion. Nothing continues. All motion is the expression of the law.
Okay, so another stupid statement for which he has no evidence. So he has no evidence that photons get tired and wear out. He has no evidence that this bottle even will run out of velocity. Nothing. Just says it.
Of inertia as manifest in magnitude in the case of matter in motion. Matter and motion are one and the same things.
Oh, so again, now that's almost the silly argument, right? In a sense, just because I would argue that yes, matter is motion in the sense that the little bits inside are all trapped motion, but clearly the matter itself is neutral because just like an orbit, there's no net motion. You end up back where you started. Or even this, you just keep ending up where you were in location. You don't advance anywhere. You're just a net zero. Kind of interesting. I mean, they sort of got zero right? Round zero. It doesn't have a vector. A net vector. It's a zero. Nothing.
Expression and pressure mediation.
Again, pressure mediation, perfectly good way to understand the universe is made out of pressure. But again, he doesn't illustrate or explain any of it. And clearly all the evidence indicates that it's made of a lot of straight line pressure that moves in straight lines, straight vectors, rays of force. That's what the evidence indicates. Rays of force.
The law was written to fit the non-existent premises vis-a-vis Isaac Newton's first law.
Yeah, okay, so he's still bitching about Newton's law, which is perfectly rational, perfectly acceptable, perfectly simple enough, and he hasn't debunked it or proven anything wrong with it whatsoever. He's just claiming it, and it's just so fucking dishonorable. All right, so commenters here are weak. The only thing Ken does is talk in circles. Yeah, well, he talks in circles with the same gibberish. So it's redundant. Yeah, well, whatever. But it's not even circular. I'm not talking, look, when I'm talking about straight lines, I don't mean these straight line things.
Mistakenly presumed to exist, but which in fact don't. A body cannot continue in a state of rest because bodies at rest do not exist in nature.
Again, this is again straw manning a dead man. Clearly, Isaac Newton knew the Earth spun on its axis. Clearly, he knew that an object sitting in front of him wasn't at rest. He's saying rest relative to your observation. Clearly, so you're just straw manning a dead man. You're such a fucking coward.
Bodies are waves of motion. Well, that's not a wave.
Waves of motion. Bodies are waves of motion. I mean, more just fucking pull out of his fat, flabby ass bullshit.
Have a motion? That's just a pencil sitting there on the table. No, it's not. That's just what you see. You see an apple fall to the ground. All you have to do is wait a while, and you'll see it deteriorate, and it will.
Again, it's more just nonsense. I'll see it. Yes, I could sit around for 6 months and watch the apple reduce to its minerals and the moisture evaporate out. I could watch a decomposing human that didn't fall down, or so again, it's just this silly notion that somehow that I'm going to disqualify gravity by pointing out that the apple pushed down by gravity somehow because of thermal energy in the earth, some of it, just a tiny percentage of it, will end up rising again. And somehow I've underdone gravity. And you haven't. They're two different forces. The heat is a real thing. Thermal energy is a real thing. The fact that the molecules are vibrating more means that there's more distance between them, and they're buoyant then, like creating air inside a ballast inside of a submarine. Yes, you expand volume, then you'll create buoyancy. Same difference, idiot. It's a force, fuckhead.
Rise back up again into the atmosphere and dissipate itself. Apple will fall, and eventually the apple will rise again. Like it'll rise again.
So again, this premise is idiotic, again, because the apple won't do that. The real substance of the apple won't do that. All that'll do that is, again, some percentage of the water vapor, and I'm not even sure how much of that percentage will ever rise up again. Like I said, it might just end up as dew and then end up in the ground and then end up inside of a plant.
Again. When motion ceases, bodies cease to be. This is actually a quote from Walter Russell, this particular little passage. One might as well appropriately refer to sound as being rest and silence. Right?
Okay. So another nutter. One might as well consider sound silence. Another guy's just talking shit out of his fat, flabby ass.
Very good one there, huh? For sound is matter in motion like all other bodies. A body cannot continue its uniform motion in a straight line in this radial universe of curved pressure gradients.
All right. So because the atmosphere is an ether, everything's an ether, and that's all the proof we need. The atmosphere is an ether, so everything's an ether, even though we have no indication that space is an ether, but whatever. We say so. Trust me. That's all. There's nothing here. There's no physics here. There's no science here. There's just proclamations by a fat asshole who molests dead people.
Such a phenomena is impossible. Yes, here Walter Russell is 100% correct. Likewise, all bodies are continuously being acted upon by two outside opposing forces, not one intermittent force.
So he's accepting Russell saying the word force, but Newton can't say the word force. I mean, the duplicity, the hypocrisy, disgusting. So again, Russell isn't saying anything Newton wouldn't have said. That secondary sentence wasn't any different than what Newton was saying.
That was Walter Russell quote. But anyway, absolutely no body in the universe is at rest. Matter by...
So again, Newton, I won't say it again, because obviously anybody who has any integrity understands that Newton was perfectly aware that he couldn't tell what the absolute frame was, and he wasn't qualified to say what could be actually at rest. The word was used in the context of common understanding of rest, which is relative to what you're analyzing. It's at rest.
Denotation is the definition of force, motion, magnitude, and a dynamo that's ever in motion and unrest. Anything that is a body that we deem a body, like this light bulb's a body, this pencil's a body, this table's a body.
Yeah, they all curve linear somehow.
Nothing that has magnitude, and magnitude is magnetism, and magnetism.
Okay, so magnitude is magnetism. I should write that down, like that means something. Again, more just rubbish. Magnitude is magnetism, and magnetism is ether, and ether is pressure mediation. I mean, it's just gibberish.
Is force and motion. There is no...
Oh, force and motion, force and motion. So he won't let anybody use the word force, and yet he uses force and motion. What does that make? How does that make any sense? But what force? What force, Ken? Dielectricity. What's that? Counter space. What's that? Ether. What's that? Dielectricity. I mean, it's just...
There's absolutely no such bullshit. It's the most absurd convention to think of a body being at rest. So
again, he's saying that something can go the absolute speed, the speed of light, but nothing can go zero, says Ken.
Isaac Newton is not only wrong, he's bleeping wrong.
All right, so he's saying somehow he's profoundly wrong, that stuff tends to do exactly what it's doing, and it will do it until something acts on it. And generally speaking, it's going to be a force that acts on it. And that's somehow wrong. Incorrect. It's not how the universe actually works. When I don't think anybody rational could say that's not how it works. That's exactly how it works. Even if you're an etherist, how does ether change the fact that you have to have a change in the ether? Something has to perturbate through it. That perturbation could be called a force, couldn't it? Wouldn't it be rational to call like photons force? Perturbating? Perturbations are force. Force acts on something. The action is to change the motion. What's wrong with that? How could that be irrational or wrong? Bleeping wrong.
Weight, by the way, also, as I've said before, is location specific, medium specific, vector specific, magnitude specific, phase specific.
Oh, who was talking about weight? That's right, nobody. So again, yes, everybody knows that scales work different based on how much gravity there is. Wow. Ooh, no one can figure that out, that you weigh less on the moon. Ooh. That doesn't mean anything. Newton knew that too.
Coherency specific. And one other thing I'm going to leave unmentioned.
Oh, yeah, coherency specific. So it's not any of those things specific. Weight is specific to one thing, gravity.
I don't like to let everything go. So Newton's first law, let's examine it again. Every body tends to continue in its state of rest. There's no such thing as rest. or uniform motion.
Yeah, so he gave you the choice that whether it's at rest or whether it's moving. So if you want to think everything's moving, fine. He didn't say you had to believe things were at rest. He's just saying whether or not it is at rest or moving, the same rule applies. That's all he was saying.
Motion, there's no such thing as uniform motion.
So again, there's no such thing as uniform motion. So nothing has a uniform. So the moon has been doing the same thing for so many years. It's not uniform. We can't call that uniform motion. I think we can. I mean, there's probably something more obvious in terms of a long time motion. You could argue that the radioactive decay of some elements is a uniform motion, a uniform action anyway, made of a uniform motion. That there's a clock ticking inside of the atom, based on motion, and that the moment of decay is the completion of that uniform motion.
In a straight line, no straight lines in the universe, unless it is acted upon. Acted upon how?
The force hits it. It experiences the force. What's it? Why does it matter? How? Was it Newton's job to explain how the force impacts it, or just to say that we know the force exists? I can give you the inverse square law, and I can tell you exactly how strong the force will be at different locations. Why does he have an obligation to explain how the force got there, or how exactly the force affects the object when he's saying it exactly affects it this way, this much, by this amount? He's giving you pretty much all the details you need, and you're complaining. You're certainly not pointing out how he's wrong by saying he didn't explain where gravity came from. That wasn't what he was doing in his first law. He wasn't explaining where gravity comes from. He was just explaining how it affects objects, jackass.
Any body can be acted upon by a field. It can be destroyed.
Again, the field means nothing if it doesn't have force in it. Like force field. If it's just field, then it doesn't do anything, the force field. So if you put up your shields, your force fields, but they don't have any force in them, then they won't work. They don't do anything. So a field without force in it doesn't mean anything. So until the field is forcified, the field is a useless word because it's really just a zero then. Without force, there's nothing to the field. Field has to have force in it.
Or accelerated or impelled, depends on the field modality. Acted upon how? Doesn't have to be touched. The same.
Well, if Newton is clearly saying it can be, and that's the whole point. He's saying you can touch it with an object already moving, another object, because that's going to be a force transfer, or you can affect it with the real gravity force. So I can move something with gravity and have it hit this bottle suspended somewhere, and this extra mass hitting it will move the bottle even more than the gravity. Well, obviously they're going to move at the same speed, but if this had more acceleration.
Everything exists at every level too. Everything are fields. Like if there's like
so more nonsense. Everything are fields. He doesn't believe in any fields. He believes in one field, some sort of ether field. What are these? Everything is fields. So why would he even say that when he doesn't believe in any of them? I just don't get how do people listen to this shit and then thumb it up?
Woman across the street, and I give her like a creepy look, like I'm not actually physically out there touching somebody, right? She's like, oh, that's creepy, and then she like runs down the street. I've never done that before in my life. Yeah,
right. I mean, just it's such a silly remark in the sense that obviously something does touch you, which are the photons. The image. And so you are impacted by the image.
That's pretty funny though, isn't it? That's not, is there any...
Newton wasn't talking about the fact that you have a mental perception and some electricity spins around your brain and then you make a decision and make motion. That's not what Newton was talking about. He wasn't talking about humans moving. He was talking about objects that don't have any, that aren't machines. He wasn't talking about what machines can do. He was talking about objects that aren't machines, that don't have calories to burn and energy processes and, you know, propellers and shit like that.
The interaction going on there? No, it's purely eye contact and consciousness. Well, that's not phenomena, is it? That's acting upon another body, right?
Oh, whatever. So again, it's just a preposterous perversion here, right? I mean, straw man, just disgusting. Straw manning a dead man. I mean, it's just disgusting.
If I whistle at someone, go, hey, and they turn their heads, that's not, you know? Well, sure, that's sound vibrations. Okay, taking it a little too far.
Yeah, and the other one had light vibrations, idiot. So yes, the fact is that the influence is communicated, but it's still a nonsensical argument because Newton wasn't talking about objects that have motors and batteries and storage devices of energy that they can release to change their direction at any time. He wasn't talking about rocket ships, idiot. And we're a lot more like a rocket ship than we are like a rock. He was talking about rocks. Dumbass. You know, fuckhead.
Acted upon by an outside force. Is it a force? Things are acted upon by either force or the complete opposite of a force, which is acceleration.
All right, so that does that make any sense at all? The complete opposite of a force is acceleration, when clearly Newton was saying quite clearly that forces cause acceleration. It can't be opposites. Insanely stupid statement.
This is a force. Me tossing this rope up, me dropping this rope is the complete opposite of force. That's acceleration.
Amazing. So he throws it up with his hand and pushes it, and you know that's not acceleration. So he didn't counter gravity by creating more force going up than the force coming down, therefore it went up, and that was acceleration. Newton would have called that an acceleration, and then when he lets it go, he calls that an acceleration. So he doesn't even know what acceleration is. He's such a fucking idiot.
Well, let's see. This is force. This is acceleration. You know, something...
So amazing. Amazingly stupid comparison. Right, especially when he's using push. Didn't pull it up. He pushed it up. Right. And somehow it's opposite. And so if he threw it down, if I throw this bottle down, it goes faster than gravity would move it. But that's okay because it's in the same direction as gravity. So then it's not the opposite. The force is the same as the acceleration then. I mean, how silly is this guy going to get before somebody besides me says, let's beat the shit out of him? This is bullshit. Disgusting that he gets away with this. This fucking fat coward.
That simple. You think we would have been taught that shit in school, but we weren't taught that shit in school.
Thank goodness. I mean, yes, there was a lot of dumbass teachers in the world, but yes, I frankly never had a teacher this fucking stupid. You know, I mean, wow. Fuck.
This is acceleration, and this is force. You know, expelled X amount of calories and energy to impel a force in motion to this Sharpie marker.
Right, so throw it down, and then you'll say the same thing. You'll say, gravity's accelerating it, I'm forcing it. And when Newton was just saying, well, they're both force. Gravity's a force, idiot. Yeah, and you pushing something is a force. Those are both forces. And that's clearly what Newton was saying, and only an insane person, or a lying fat tub of shit, would say Newton was saying anything different.
against the acceleration of gravity. Force in motion, inertia. So Newton's first law is absolute and total bullshit. Undeniably, irrefutably, existentially, and empirically.
I mean, you know, it's just disgusting. I mean, it's just tragic, I guess, that Newton doesn't have a whole bunch of relatives still alive or something who would sit there and come to his defense and sue this fucker. But he should be sued. He should be sued by making these accusations against the integrity of Isaac Newton. This is disgusting for him to say that he somehow debunked Newton. It's disgusting.
So, and I will go over Newton's second and third laws, which are equally amounts bullshit.
So I think earlier in this video he said F equals he said F equals ma is a perfectly valid formula, and that's the second law. So I mean, why? He's insane. This fat tub of shit he is insane. He's a psychotic coward. Yeah, a psycho coward. Picking on the dead. Oh, this is disgusting. He gets away with this shit. These little coward fucking minions. You're all fucking cowards. Why aren't one of you fucking minions of Ken Wheeler? Why don't you have the guts to come into this fucking room and defend this fucking slop? This fucking crap that this fucking pig is spewing. Ugh, disgusting. All right, so enough of that. Newton's physics are almost absurd as Ken Wheeler's virtual reality. But that doesn't say anything either. Newtonian physics are ... almost absurd as Ken Hovind's virtual reality. Newtonian physics are almost as absurd. And so what do you base that on? I just don't understand how you turn Newton's physics into absurd. Einstein didn't think it was absurd. Einstein added to Newton. He didn't subtract from Newton. So again, find the subtraction Einstein made from Newton. What part of Newton did Einstein erase and say, no, that's not right? What part? You lunatics. Oh, I can't. These people are just so fucking stupid. They don't even know. And that's the propaganda of the quantum mechanics people and all these fucking people. They've made this notion that classical physics was wrong. No, it was perfectly rational because it didn't make any statements about what caused gravity. They're the ones making statements about causes. Newton didn't make statements about causes. Newton is famous for not making statements about causes. He directly stated, I've told you how it works. I don't know why it works. Fuck. That's disgusting. So yeah, I guess I'll just block this guy. I mean, it's just a nothing statement. Newton's physics is somehow religion, when it's the most disciplined and careful statements a scientist could make. No exaggerations, no extra bits, no going where he wasn't certain. He just told you what he had really good evidence of, and that's it. Really good science. And he's comparing it to a religion. What a cunt. What a fucking cunt. Bo. Get cancer and die, you piece of shit. Yeah. That's just disgusting. Ugh. I hate people. All right. So let's see if there's anything else to gibber about. Yeah, so I didn't know I was going to play that video. I was thinking of playing his new one on metaphysics, which was just hilarious, but I said, oh, fuck that. I didn't say that. I obviously ended up not playing it. So I don't exactly know why. See if there's any new subscription thingies of interest. No. Okay. Let's see. I don't think there was anything else important to play here. I still could finish the whatever his face Joe Rogan thing, but I don't think I'll worry about that. Oh yeah, I still gotta play these stupid quantum mechanics videos. It's just horrible. All right, so we just sum up. I am tired. I just did want to get to some other stuff, but I just don't know if my brain is in the mood. It is discouraging. You know, it's just thinking about how fucking desperate people are to evade simple right answers. And they are desperate. Let's see. I guess we'll use this window as the background. That'll do. Yeah, so I sort of made my point. Push. There's only two things in the universe, the forces and the matter. That's all there is. The matter, the forces compress the matter. That creates storage of energy. And when you release that pressure, that's the release of the energy. I mean, not complicated. Yeah, I mean, I've sort of made the arguments about, magnetism is just the force filtered, just simple. Yeah, I really don't have to go into this any further or redundantly. And so there's just no interaction from you people, so I guess there's not much to say. You really are quite useless, listeners. I'll just point that out. I mean, just no help at all. Can't do a damn thing. 12 viewers, yeah. Well, I mean, that's part of the problem. But not much I can do about that. So, yeah, so always the same dead end. So anyway, if you are at all somewhat literate, speak some English, some reasonable version of English, in some voice that can possibly be understood by other people, and you know something about physics and wish to challenge me in live conversation, just email ds@draftphysics.com. And I will, we can see if you're not a complete asshole, you can have your opportunity to in some way defend what I would argue is just a bunch of dogmatic religious preaching called quantum mechanics and bent space. Totally unproven theories. And clearly with huge liabilities. Paradoxes plus no hope of unification. So, alrighty. Well, that's all there is. That's all there is. So, till the next time and such.